And with that, I want to bring to the forefront our first speaker for the morning, the alderperson, the alderman himself. I consider Alderman Yancy a friend from our days of activism around a number of very big causes. Um, as we've watched Alderman Yancy over the last year, it is clear that, sir, your leadership is informed by your commitment to social justice and activism and community voice. And so I want to welcome you to share with the people a reflection on Dr. King's words and life, and then your own work and what it is we can expect. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you, Brother Karan, and thank you, Dr. Middleton, for extending this invitation to be with you today. My relationship with Community Renewal Society goes back at least a decade, so this is kind of like a homecoming. Um, Today, I'm sharing a passage from Dr. King's sermon titled The American Dream, which was given on July 4th, 1965 at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. In this sermon, he talks about how the pathway to the American dream for Black Americans lies within the fight for economic equality and a multiracial democracy, and the need for continued activism to break down barriers and bring the American dream to fruition. In his message, he says, human progress never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. It comes through tireless efforts and the persistent work of dedicated individuals. And without this hard work, time itself becomes the ally of the insurgent and primitive forces of irrational emotionalism and social stagnation. So we must somehow get rid of this idea that time alone will solve the problem. We must use time. In this speech given on the anniversary of this country's independence, King's focus was on the American dream. He calls it a dream that centers an amazing universalism that all Americans are entitled to the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that these rights are God-given. However, we all know that these freedoms have not been gifted equally to Black Americans as to others. He goes on to say that racial discrimination is morally wrong, and it is all of our responsibility to work passionately and relentlessly to make this dream a reality for us all. That this work is not subversive or anti-American. On the contrary, it is necessary to save the soul of America. So when reflecting on this quote, while reflecting on this quote, I want to share why this passage resonates with me. So before being elected to city council, I spent around 15 years as a labor and community organizer, organizing in many of the historically oppressed neighborhoods in Chicago, and around many of the same issues that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and others of the time organized around: income inequality, dignity and respect, community development, access to a quality public education, and most recently, police accountability. In 2016, I co-founded the Grassroots Alliance for Police Accountability, or GAPA, in the wake of the murder of Laquan McDonald. Community and faith-based organizations like Community Renewal Society came together to lead the city in the creation of a civilian oversight body for the Chicago Police Department. From 1965 to 1966, Dr. King led the Chicago Freedom Movement, which called on the city of Chicago to, among other things, create a citizens review board for the Chicago Police Department. In the 1960s, like today, the Chicago Police Department had a reputation for heavy-handed and racially biased policing, which left Black residents of the city in fear during encounters with those who were charged with keeping the peace. Coincidentally, my father joined the Chicago Police Department in June of 1965, where he was assigned to the Harrison District on Chicago's West Side, which included the Chicago home of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and his family. The fight for a civilian-led oversight body in Chicago was nearly 60 years in the making. And if it wasn't for the dedication of extraordinary people who fought tirelessly through challenging political climates, organized opposition, and time itself, this victory would not have been possible. So when I think about these words from Reverend Dr. King, I come to the following place. First, social progress requires action. Change is not inevitable. Change is the result of intentional and sustained action by dedicated individuals. And our progress is dependent upon our willingness to fight for it. This makes me think of Frank Chapman of the Chicago Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, or CARPR, a former political prisoner who was wrongfully convicted and has been fighting for community control of the police since the early 1970s. Secondly, stagnation is the enemy of progress. Time is of the essence, and because of this, our time must be used wisely. The word time also means moment, or is defined by the Merriam-Webster dictionary as the measured or measurable period during which an action, process, or condition exists or continues. When Dr. King says we must use time, I believe he's saying we must be aware of the moment. In 2021, in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd, GAPA joined forces with CARPA to form the Empowering Communities for Public Safety Coalition. It was this new coalition that was able to create the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability via ordinance in 2021. Success comes when preparation meets opportunity. So it's important to do the work with intention so we're ready for the opportunity when it comes. And then lastly, without hard work and commitment and resolve, change will not come. This speech, nearly 60 years old, says, without this hard work, time itself becomes the ally of the insurgent and primitive forces of irrational emotionalism and social stagnation, so that we must somehow get rid of the idea that time alone will solve the problem. This is similar to what the Apostle James said in the book of James regarding the followers of Jesus Christ, whose works weren't reflective of their faith. For as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also. In other words, our work must change. Our work for change must match our will. These are words to live by leaders whose words will live forever. And those are my thoughts for today. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, sir. Time alone is not enough, and change is not inevitable. I'm sitting with that for both on personal and then political levels. And thank you for calling us to be more meaningfully involved in the work of making change happen. We cannot just sit idly by or wait with bated anticipation. Thank you, Alderman, for your leadership and your words.